episode of Quilt with the Stars is brought to you by Baby Lock, for the love of sewing, Moda, make something with Moda fabrics, and Koala Cabinets, sewing furniture custom built in America. You're watching Quilt with the Stars. I'm Mary Fons here with Lisa Bongean. Welcome to Quilt with the Stars, Lisa.
Thank you very much.
It's the show and tell. It's the trunk show. It's like this is the goods, the Lisa Bongean Primitive Gathering goods, and you are fortunate enough to be sitting there, standing there, dancing in your seats, ready to see all this because this is popular stuff, and we're gonna just have a bonanza here. First of all, before just to get them all excited and really waiting for this, I want to know where you're making these things. What's your studio like, and tell me where the headquarters is.
Okay, I have a wonderful studio in Menasha, Wisconsin, my home. I don't know how many square feet, but the lower level of my home is fortunately my domain, and it is full of wonderful sewing cabinets and cutting tables, all in black.
I was going to say, we kind of match today too, but you use black so well. Yes. It's so cool.
Yeah, black is my main color.
Yeah.
I know it's not really a color, but they say it's not, but whatever.
I think it's a color.
It's a color in my world.
Exactly.
Yeah, but so I have this, like I said, I'm fortunate to have a wonderful studio decorated with quilts and pin cushions, and I have a hand quilting frame set up because I do some utility quilting still on some of my wool and flannel projects. Just lots of inspiration, little quilts hung here and there.
Sure. Great. And of course those pictures are illustrating all of that, and it's like the headquarters, or the what's the word I want? It's
the hub where it all
happens. The hub. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. It's the hub. So let's take a look at a few of the things that you've made in the studio. Tell me a little bit about this beautiful quilt here on my left.
This flannel quilt is my line of wool and needle flannels from Moda Fabrics. It is called Rockstar.
Nice.
That's the one in the middle, obviously, surrounded by its groupies.
Of course, yes, exactly. The backup singers, right.
And what I like about these flannel quilts that I have designed with the Moda Fabrics is that they are simple quilts. Now, most of my flannel quilts, I kind of can say they are quilt in a day, but this is quilt in 2 days. So, you know, the little stars take a little bit more time, but it goes together so simple. And again, based on an antique quilt that I saw, changed it up a little bit and kind of made it my own, using those wonderful, soft, warm flannels that look like wool from Moda.
Absolutely. The flannels are beautiful, and the quilting on that quilt is so great. What is that design?
It's the orange peel or the pumpkin seed.
Yeah, pumpkin seed. Right.
Yes. Pumpkin seed design. One of my girls at my shop actually did that with her new Statler.
It's fantastic. Let's take a look at another pieced quilt, the one right over there. That 45 and life to go.
It's awesome. Yeah, was my first line of fabric from Moda, other than the primitive muslins that came out, featuring the backgrounds that we talked about in the other episode, with just little vintage prints scaled with neutrals and blacks and a little bit of honey color and then a little bit of brown. But this quilt features the two tones of tan and black. And it also has a big sister quilt. This is 55 by 55 inches with 5.5-inch blocks. The big quilt has 11-inch blocks. Same amount of blocks, same pattern, just we enlarged it to make a king-size bed.
You know, this is a good example of some of the elements that I see showing up in your work over and over. Part of your aesthetic is the brilliant use of black and tan, the muted colors, but also the small scale. Those little checkerboards. What are those finishing? Like
a 1/2 inch.
Oh,
yeah. But you remember, you have to remember that they're not little until they're ironed into the quilt. So we're still working with 1-inch strips. So that's not as intimidating as 1/2 inch. So people see that little piecing, they think, oh, I can't do that. But it's a
one
it's
inch
1
strip.
inch is still doable.
That's doable,
yes.
totally. So now we've got a few wool things to look at. Let's start with this one right over our shoulder. Tell me about this quilt.
Yes, this is Folk Art Album, based on the album quilts that we all love. This is also wool with flannel backing. This is not a wool back. So I like to use the flannel, so one, to keep the cost down of the quilt.
Yes.
And also it's hard to piece wool. You can't piece wool into half square triangles easily, so therefore the wonderful flannels that are out on the market today come in handy to, you know, mimic the look of wool and add the wool appliques to it. And those are my initials down there to personalize.
What's the H for?
That's my maiden name.
Ah,
so instead of doing your middle initial, you know, we don't want to lose who we really are.
Right.
So I document with my maiden name, so my family gets credit for me too, not just my husband's family.
Nice, nice. I like that. Well, part of the nice thing about blending the wool and the flannel too is that there's a depth, even more of a softness. Like it's really extraordinary. It looks like satiny, touchable, soft. It's just really tactile.
Right. And one of the things I want to point out about the wool applique is wool doesn't have to be primitive, fuzzy, all over the place. It can be neat, clean, and beautiful, and, you know, with a high level of workmanship still involved with it. It doesn't have to be, you know, primitive or rough. It can be beautiful and neat.
And the final quote we have on the wall to show is a perfect example of all those things that you just said. Tell me about this quilt.
Right. This is called Primitive Garden. It also has lots of elements of my life in this quilt. There are the bird bath my sons gave me for Mother's Day, my grandpa's 100-year-old wheelbarrow, the hollyhocks that were seeds in our family for generations, just a wide range of things. Those are my garden tools, my gloves. I just laid them out on the table and drew them.
It's an autobiography.
Yeah, and the saying came to me when I was strawberry picking one day. In the field, there was a big boulder with this saying on it. So as soon as I saw it, I thought, that's got to go on my quilt. And thus the strawberries hanging around there.
So charming.
But the cool thing about this quilt is we've kitted it and run it as a block of the month for many, many, many times, and we still are going to do it again this April, starting one last time. Nice. And for those of you who still want to do it.
April 2012, look for it.
Yep. And when people make it and they finish it and they ask me for permission to show it in a show, I always say, yes, you have my permission, but one
caveat,
one request I have is that you have to send me the picture of your ribbon with the quilt on, because I know you're going to win. And they do. I have a collection of pictures of this quilt with blue ribbons on it.
Unreal.
Either viewer's choice or, you know, best of show or.
So great. Well, there's so much to look at. There's so much going on. But like you said, just because, you know, it's wool and it's vintage and it's primitive, that style, folky, it's not messy. It's clean. It's precise. There's specificity. Everything that's going on is its own world, its own image, and it's just incredible workmanship too. It's a great example of your aesthetic and what you do. Extraordinary. I love it, Lisa.
Thank you.
I love it.
It's fun.
Yeah, it is. And you also, one thing I want to say is that you muted the color with the antique finish.
Yeah, I have a spray that we sell, and it's called Instant Antique. And what it does is it mutes down all the different fabrics from different fabric lines to have the same hue, so they look good in a quilt.
Great.
Even though they might be lighter or darker, they still have that same warm look to them.
It's uniformity. That's great. So in front of us here, we have a new project. This is going to be running in Fons and Porter's Love of Quilting in November, December of 2012. That's correct, right? Yep. Tell me a little bit about I know there's 2 different greens in this quilt. It may not be apparent right away, but tell me about why you did that.
This is based on an antique quilt that was just one red and one green, but to make the quilt, you know, my own, or, you know, put my little spin on it, I've taken just 2 greens and 2 reds and kind of 9-patched my greens. So this is, so 5 of this one, 4 of this one, and then switched them in the borders to mix it up. You don't always have to use the same fabric for all 4 borders.
Right, yeah, exactly. Who said you did,
Who
right?
says,
You question everything.
Exactly. Then again with the red, so we have a red and a red with the stars, and then this one here, and those are also 9 patched throughout the big quilt.
Part of what I think the effect does, and I talked to you about this, it was funny, I said, you know, it's like using the 2 different greens, it's almost like it's a little faded in places. That's really great. And Lisa, you were like, yeah, I know. That's part of the point, you know. Yeah. It's like, wow, that's a great idea. You know? So it's a beautiful quilt, and the quilting we have to talk about.
Yes,
that's just part of
this is quilted by Linda Hershka. I have to say that she is a new quilter and just fabulous. Makes these quilts come alive.
She's new.
New, a year. She's, you know, we just want to hate her, right?
Yeah, totally. It's amazing.
Yeah. She's natural, and that's what happens when people find their niche. The light bulb goes on, and she found what she's good at. She found her gift.
She did. And you said this was wool batting in this quilt
wool batting.
I noticed it once.
Yeah,
it just feels
to help
so
with make these appliques look like we spent lots of time putting trapunto method in there, but we didn't.
We didn't. Good, great. And this is the Moda fabric line that's coming out.
Yes, seasonal little gatherings.
Great.
May 2012.
Awesome. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about wool and these smaller projects that you have. And I was going to ask you too, as we go into this, what is a good first project for someone who's never done any wool? Like maybe it's something small, like
perfect right here.
Yeah.
So this right here, I use this sample, a matter of fact, to teach in classes. This is one of them on my workshop list, and it gives them a great idea whether they love this or not.
How could you not love it? But yes, good point, exactly.
And what's kind of cool is they'll learn, when I teach, we learn all sorts of different tips and techniques to working with wool. And one of them, just looking at this, is when you have a little tiny applique, you scale down your thread. So here I'm using pearl cotton. Here I'm just using 1 strand of the 3-stranded floss, so the thread doesn't take over.
Right.
The applique.
Because that's a small little flower.
Yep, so this is a good beginner project. You know, under $20 kit, just reasonable. You get the backing in the kit. The thread doesn't come in the kit, but...
And the website is?
primitivegatherings.us.
Great, and you can get patterns and wool and all kinds of things there, I'm sure. Okay,
exactly.
Great beginner project. Okay, how about this?
And then this is another project that quilters just love.
Be still, my beating heart. Oh my gosh, and I love it.
You know, it's the same, just basic little basket, just, you know, enhanced with different colors all the way around.
I'll see you later. Bye, I'm just gonna take the, I'm sorry. I love it so much.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
And it's really easy. If you look at it, these aren't even sewn down. They're just stitched with colonial knot in the center to hold them down. So it actually goes quite fast. You have to cut them out, of course. The prep is the pain part of it, but it's not really a pain.
It's the meditation.
Yeah, it's the prep work that, you know, before the glory.
Right. And scissors. What kind of scissors do you use?
I really am in love with the Dovo scissors line. Stainless steel, really light, and I always tell quilters that they deserve a good scissors. Think of it as an heirloom piece that you can pass down in your family. Nice. Wouldn't it be cool to have your grandmother's scissor?
Oh, yes. Yeah. Yes. I think I'm going to try to snag some of my mom's at least. But yeah, having grandma's scissors, that'd be amazing.
Yep.
Cool.
So all quilters deserve a good scissors. Get yourself some.
And this black wool, I mean, it's just kind of a signature thing for you.
Yeah, you know, and just to make a point, you know, wool doesn't have to be dark, you know, so, you know, it can be light. This would be beautiful on a light background as well. So if you're not into black, like I am, you know, there is ways to work around it.
Sure.
But, you know, they just pop on this black.
Yeah.
Everything really looks better with black.
Yeah, they do. I think so. Yep. And we've got another one there, a seasonal.
Yes, this is a little Christmas one that could be a little tree skirt for our little trees that are very popular to decorate all through the house. But if you look on this is some of the little motives in my seasonal little gathering line that we talked about. Where's the little reindeer that...
The little reindeer.
Yep.
The cutest guy in the world. I love how big his nose is. Really exceptional.
So just basic wool applique, fused down. My favorite fusible is Steam A Seam 2 Light, and then with, you know, embellished with a little embroidery stitches in between to make it all come together and to be just a fabulous mat. One of the things that you do is this, you know, the variegated, almost the variegated with the hand dye. You get these different portions of the color, and it's just extraordinary. It makes the present here look dimensional instead of just flat, like it would if it was a solid piece of wool. It makes me want to eat that little gingerbread man more than I would normally, which is a lot. Okay, and then what's next there? All right, this is called Prairie Rose Table Runner, and this is in my book called Summer Gatherings. I have a line of books. They're all gatherings. Yeah. So this is from Summer Gatherings. My books contain about 28 projects in them with lots of quilts, wool applique, stitchery, all sorts of things, and even recipes if you have to cook.
Nice.
I love to cook.
Yeah, I do too.
Don't get enough time to do it. But this is a long runner for a farm table. Just the old-fashioned tongues on the end. Just make it, you know, based on kind of Baltimore Elbish style applique, fuse down, stitch around. Doesn't take a lot of time.
No, and the result is amazing. Now I'm just looking at the back, how you did the...
Yeah, and I'm a little frugal, so I don't like to put wool on the back. So we can really keep, you know, I can use that other piece of wool that I would have used on the back for another runner.
Exactly.
So I just use the brushed cottons, homespun on the back, same thing on the, you know, on the back of those also. And that's just all in the pattern on how to make that and how to attach that back, and that's just turned and flipped. You see that? That's
yes, exactly. And the books are available on your website as well, correct? Okay, awesome. We have one more piece to show. Let's get that out here.
This quilt is based on the wedding quilt I made for Nick and I when we got engaged.
Oh, nice.
Because everybody, 15 years.
15 years.
Yeah, I think. I might have got that right.
You can meet Nick at the booth.
Might only be 14.
Maybe 14. feels like 25.
Yeah,
in a good way. And Nick works at the booth.
Yes, a lot of the quilters out there know Nick. They come to see him at all the shows. He rings them up and takes their money and entertains them while they're in line.
He is. He's an Elvis fan and dressed up as Elvis at Market one year for Halloween.
Yes, that's Nick.
That's Nick. He's way cool.
Life is never dull when Nick is around.
That's good. That's a good thing.
Yeah, so he makes me laugh.
And this was so you had sunflowers at your wedding.
Yeah, well, I just made a quilt. I made my own quilt.
Yeah.
But this is just a smaller rendition of it, although mine wasn't black. So it's not quite the same, but it was a 4-block and a design border. But this is just, everybody was kind of after me. We want that sunflower pattern. We want, you know, when I would show it in trunk shows.
Sure.
So this is my way of sharing it, you know, with everybody without actually sharing my own personal
the one
wedding quilt.
Yeah, that's private. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So some things just have to be. But this is, you know, again, a mimic of the antique 4-block quilts that are out made long ago. 4 blocks the same, you know, mix it up, changing the wools, changing to make it have movement, be more interesting. And just, this is, again, done on flannel.
Yep. And the quilting is intricate.
The quilting is just echoing like they would have probably done back in the day.
Right.
And like, look at these little scallops. So these aren't sewn; they're just like cut with pinking shear kind of thing, and then just the other one is sewn on top of it.
Down, right? Exactly. Lisa, these are all beautiful examples of your work, and I know it's just a very small fraction of what you produce in that great studio of yours. Thank you for coming on Quilt with the Stars.
Thanks you for letting me share them with you.
Absolutely a pleasure. We'll see you next time. This episode of Quilt with the Stars is brought to you by Baby Lock, for the love of sewing, Moda, make something with Moda fabrics, and Koala Cabinets, sewing furniture custom built in America.